Chapter 19. Steve and Temrat and I decided to literally take our minds off of what had happened to me son, and we took a train to visit the Theater of Plant Experience, a bizarre entertainment where you fed data into your HUD and got to spend half an hour as a tree or bush, or whatever vegetable you liked. It was hard to explain, but strangely relaxing. I left feeling like I'd like to be a plant again sometime, but never for too long. The theater was in what was called the Spin District, and after we left, we used our bracelets to find a restaurant nearby. Steve picked a place that offered a wide selection of living food. The selections for me were more limited, but I figured I could be a sport, and I finally ordered seaweed-based noodle-like substance in a spicy, no translation available, but biologically compatible gravy. It was good, actually. I'd recommend it. Temrat proved that girls from across the galaxy share certain things in common and ordered a salad. The restaurant was on a gigantic patio, hanging over a busy air thoroughfare, and the floor was made of durable substance that was completely transparent, so we could look down and see the lights of the passing vehicles whisking by in the darkness. It was beautiful and utterly futuristic, like the central planets in the Firefly universe. Tamret was wearing a sleeveless lavender dress, and she had her hair tied up in a bun, bordered by the protuberances of her ears. She sat with her back towards the railing, and she was lit by the city lights and stars and planets and the moon outside the dome. I was just wearing jeans and a short-sleeved black shirt that had somehow avoided wrinkling. I thought I looked presentable, but I was under no illusion that I looked as good as she did. I was explaining to them my Ender's Game's concerns, without making any references to Ender's Game, of course. I hadn't been able to shake the notion that we were being trained for something, and that whatever that something was, it probably involved fighting the fads.
So, what are you saying?
Tamrat said.
That we're like second-class citizens being recruited as their soldiers? I've been thinking about that too,
Steve said, as he used his tong-like utensils to grab at individual blue worms, or maybe snakes, or whatever they were, wriggling around in his bowl. He popped one into his mouth.
I've been doing some reading too. You know, most of the beings here are herbivores, right?
I ate my spicy noodle things. Yeah, that's old news.
But this might not be. Most of the planets these beings come from have no carnivores at all, not even among their animals.
This got our attention.
You're kidding,
Tamrat said. Steve shook his head.
No, I double-checked. Most of these beings come from planets where no creatures eat other creatures. Confederation scientists believe that intelligent life is more likely to evolve on worlds where there are no predators.
That's not what I learned in biology, though, I said. I thought that predators promote evolution by forcing animals to adapt in order to survive.
Sure, Steve said, if what you want to survive is being hunted by a predator, but when you have all of your mates being eaten all the time, there's more food for you, right? That favors traits like speed, environmental awareness, camouflage, and stuff like that. Now take away the predators, you've got more animals competing for fewer resources, so that promotes a different type of adaptation. The animals that can best exploit that environment win out over those who are less efficient, so that means intelligence, creativity, problem solving, invention, and all that. Those are the traits that, on our worlds, you tend to find among predators. These herbivores are like carnivores that eat plants.
Except they don't know how to hunt, Tamrat said.
Exactly. Now, the last time they brought in initiates, one species was a carnivore and one an omnivore. The time before that, one omnivore. Then you have to go back 8 years to find one carnivore species.
The Vauclair, I said. Ursha's species.
Very good, mate,
Steve said, clearly impressed.
Before that, almost 50 years. You see what I'm getting at? Looks like the Confederation is trying to get cozy with its dark side.
And when you combine that with all the ways they have us train, I speculated, it makes it pretty clear that they're gearing up for war.
I still don't see the problem,
Tamrat said.
There are hundreds of worlds in the Confederation. 3 more isn't going to turn any kind of tide. It seemed to me like they're just fine-tuning. They're tweaking their culture, but they're doing it over the long term.
I hope you're right, I told her, because I get the feeling that things are a little more focused than that.
Let's keep our tongues sent in the air, but I don't want to worry too much, if you know what I mean. Look at this place.
Steve gestured towards the cityscape and the stars beyond.
No point in looking for trouble.
I know what you mean. Tamrat looked out at the city, and sadness crossed her face. I hate the thought that we're going to have to leave in less than a year. I nodded. I miss my mom and all, but when I think about Earth, it doesn't really feel like home anymore. This does. Tamrat met my gaze, and suddenly it felt like Steve wasn't there. It was just the two of us, and we were thinking the same thing, even if I wasn't entirely sure what that thing was. My heart was pounding, and I wanted so much to say something, but I didn't know what. It was like there were words I needed her to hear, but they were just outside my grasp. I felt like a moron staring at her, but she was staring back. I thought, maybe I don't need any words. Maybe all I need is to sit here with the stars and the shuttles and the spaceships and the lights of alien buildings all around us. Maybe that was all I needed to be happy. Then I felt a shadow cross my vision, and I turned to see someone looming over our table. It was Ardov. Theo stood behind him, looking bored, and Semjay was behind her, his expression distant, like he was doing math problems in his head. Ardov was grinning, and I knew that was never a good thing. Man, can you believe how fragile that human girl was? He said. They shouldn't let being so breakable into the Confederation. Anything could happen to them.
Oh, this is too unpleasant to be a coincidence,
Steve said. I started to rise, but I felt the smooth scales of Steve's fingers on my wrist, pinning my hand to the table. I understood what he was telling me. He wasn't about to see what happened to me son happen to me. I nodded to show that I understood, and he let go. I messaged Tamrat, Ardov said with unmistakable pride, and told her to let me know where you were. I figured maybe Zeke here wants a chance to vindicate his fellow humans in the sparring room. It should have been him after all. Why would Tamrat have answered his message, and why hadn't she told us about it? I couldn't figure out why she put up with him the way she did, but that was for another time. For now, I knew I had to make sure that he didn't push us around. Hey, I'm flattered that you like us so much that you want to hang out, I told him, but we're having a private conversation. I was talking about you, not to you, he said. No one gave you permission to hoot, monkey boy. We're here for Tamrat. He gestured with his head. Come on, Snowflake, you've spent enough time playing with the animals. I need you to do my laundry. I stood up. My heart was thundering, but I willed myself to be calm. Ardov was taller than I was, and stronger, and a better fighter. He'd almost killed me son in an environment designed to make injury all but impossible. I had no doubt that he could destroy me without much trouble, but I had to bet that he wouldn't be willing to risk a conflict, and I didn't want to have to fight him, but I'd rather end up in the hospital with no one but me son to talk to than let him put his hands on Tamrat. We were enjoying a nice dinner, among friends, I said, my voice almost steady. You've had your fun today, how about you give it a rest? How about you sit back down, he said, before I throw you over the railing. Do you think the nanites would save you from that? Steve had a pair of wiggling creatures trapped in his tongs, but he made no effort to eat them. Instead, he sampled the air with 2 quick flicks of his tongue.
You could try that, I reckon, but I can taste what you're going to do before you do it. If you wanted to so much as reach out to my mate here with one furry hand, I'd see it coming. Then it'd be you going over the railing, wondering how the nanites factored in when you hit the ground from a quarter mile up. You want to bet I'm wrong? Just give it a try then. He dropped the creatures into his mouth and swallowed without chewing. Ardov grinned down at me. Oh, so you can't fight your own battles? You need your pet to do it for you? Ah, nice try, Steve said. But we're a team. There's no you against him. It's you lot against us. Do you like those odds? 'Cause I know I do. Tamrat now rose. It's fine, Zeke. Her voice was quiet and soft. I'll go with them. No, I said more loudly than I had intended. You don't have to if you don't want to. She wants to be with her own kind, don't you, Snowflake? Yeah, I want to go.
She didn't sound like she meant it, but she didn't sound like she didn't either. I just couldn't read her, and I couldn't understand why she was letting Ardov order her around. I watched them walk away, Ardov's arm around her shoulder, until they disappeared into the elevator.
You could, probably sit down now, mate,
Steve said. I sat. What's going on with them?
No idea, Steve said. I don't know mammals, but I do know beings, and there is something weird there.
I just hope she's okay, I said.
Tell you what, you find out that Git's messing with her, you let me know, he said, picking up some more of his worm things. I'd like to have a good reason to break his arms. And his legs. You know, the medical team will heal him up afterwards, so no harm done.
I wanted to see if I could gently pry some information out of Tamrat at breakfast the next day, but she didn't show up. I tried to act like I wasn't worried and resigned myself to waiting until class to see her. As we approached the classroom that morning, however, we saw that there was a commotion up ahead, at Dr. Roop's office. There were several beings in peace officer uniforms, and they appeared to be arguing with Dr. Roop, and then I noticed the rural delegation hanging outside the door. I didn't get along with any of them, but I had to know what was happening. What's going on? I asked Thiel. Semjay was the least objectionable of their group, but I couldn't guarantee he'd speak to me if I asked him, and after last night's generous portion of intimidation, I didn't want to so much as make eye contact with Ardov.
Ugh, she said. It's Tamrat. Who else? She's been caught.
Caught doing what? I asked, not bothering to keep the alarm out of my voice.
Hacking. I swear, by the deity of the caste system, she's such an embarrassment.
Is she in real trouble? What if she got kicked out? What if they put her in some kind of jail? I couldn't bear the thought of that. Yeah, could be, said Ardov, coming up behind me. He was chewing on a piece of dried meat, like jerky, and grinned like this was the best morning ever. Though, if she ruins our delegation's chances, she's in for a hard time when she gets back home.
Good, Thiel said. She deserves it.
Oh, I don't think our snowflake deserves that, Ardov said. Finally, Tamrat came out of the room, looking embarrassed. Something I'd never thought possible for her. Dr. Roop had a hand on one of her shoulders, and his neck was lowered, as though this were his own shame. The peace officers left without Tamrat, however, and I considered that a good sign.
Tamrat has made a mistake, and she's sorry, Dr. Roop explained to us. We'll talk about it more another time. Suffice it to say that that between this and Ardov hurting me son, the rural delegation has not made the best impression.
I immediately pulled her to a quiet corner of the hallway. What happened?
Calm down, she said, pulling away from my grip. It's no big deal. I was just rooting around in the experience points database. They found out and overreacted. It's not like I could harm them. You can't even tinker with Confederation citizens' accounts. That's still careless, love, Steve told her. They don't muck about with that sort of thing. Maybe.
She looked sullen and defiant, like she didn't much care one way or the other. What's going to happen to you if your delegation doesn't get in? I asked her. Her eyes latched onto mine, and there was something fearful there that I didn't like. When Tamrat was crazy or defiant or foolish, I could handle it. I couldn't deal with seeing her afraid, though.
Did somebody say something?
Ardov kind of hinted that things might be bad for you. She shook her head, and then she gently brushed strands of lavender hair from her eyes.
That's not your business.
I just wanted to know if there's anything...
I said it's not your business,
she shouted. Then she pushed past me and stormed down the hallway towards the classroom.
I, don't think she wants to talk about it, mate,
Steve told me, watching her go. Yeah, thanks for decoding. A minute later, I saw Semjay, the small male rural, walking in the hall by himself. I told Steve to head to class, and I hurried to catch up with him. Hey, what's up, dude? I said. He stopped and looked up at me. His eyes were an unnerving shade of pink.
They don't want me talking to aliens,
he said in the uninflected tone I tended to associate with complete weirdos. I won't be long then, I said. I just was wondering if you know the story with Tamrat. Why is she going to be in trouble if your delegation doesn't get in?
I don't know.
he said. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe there were a lot of things that the other Rarls knew, and he didn't, because Semjay was some kind of super smart and socially clueless mutant. I was willing to believe that, except for the fact that his pink pupils were dilating and contracting in tiny, rapid bursts, almost like a pulse. I didn't know anything about Rarl behavior, so I had no idea what it meant, but I was willing to take a good guess. It suggested he was either lying or nervous. I was also the kind of minor detail I never would have noticed before. Maybe my enhanced vision was helping me pick up on subtle details. Those skill points were starting to add up. I think that you're lying, I said. Tell me what you know about it.
I guess it's not a secret,
he said, looking at his shoes, which were wide and flat, and admittedly kind of interesting.
Tamrat and Ardov came from the same totalitarian city-state, and her place there is uncertain because she doesn't have a caste. I don't know how she ended up casteless, but she did. That means she has no political protection if things go badly. She'll be the easiest person for them to take it out on when we get back.
Things were starting to make a little more sense then. Maybe.
I'm leaving now,
Semjay said. Then, being a Rarl of his word, he left. I turned to head back to the classroom, but Mrs. Price was standing directly behind me, blocking my way, hands on her hips, her red lips pursed in disapproval. I also had the distinct impression that she'd been listening to my conversation with Semjay, which had been none of her business. I felt myself pressing my teeth together in anger.
Can I have a minute, Zeke?
What do you want? I folded my arms and stared at her directly. I figured I had nothing to lose by letting her know how I felt.
I know you've been spending a lot of time with the other random delegates, she said, and I suppose I understand that, but from now on, I'd like you to keep your distance from the Rarl female. She's obviously got some serious issues, and we don't want you making any more trouble than you've already got.
Making trouble. That's what she called it? She'd already tried to get me kicked out of the delegation, and to ship me out to the Phatic Empire. Now she wanted to keep me from spending time with Tamrat. Somehow, that seemed worse than the rest of it, though. I can spend my free time with anybody that I like.
Yes, I suppose you can.
She blew air out of the corner of her mouth as though she was finding this conversation tedious beyond belief. I know I was.
You can associate with criminals and misfits, but there are always consequences.
You already tried to hand me over to the enemy, I said. I really don't think you have too many threats left.
Zeke, you seem to want to misinterpret everything I say and do as hostile. Please try to remember that I'm here to help our world, the planet we come from, which suddenly finds itself a very minor player in a complicated galaxy. You have real responsibilities now. You don't shove aside things that matter because you have a crush on some non-human creature.
My ears were now burning hot. The only friends that I have on this station are Steve and Tamrat, and I'm not...
Yes, the Ishi is undesirable as well. I think you should also stay away from him.
You can think whatever you want, I said, turning to walk away. I don't have to do what you say. She grabbed hold of my wrist. Her grip was tight, and I could feel the points of her fingernails against my skin, and they were surprisingly sharper than I would have expected.
The President of the United States sent me here to be his voice and the voice of our country and our world. And I'm also telling you to keep your distance from the other randoms. They are going to ruin their own delegations. I don't want them ruining ours.
I could get lippy with adults I didn't respect, but being outright disobedient wasn't in my nature. I'd been raised to respect my teachers and authority figures and to assume that they were right, even when I didn't like what they had to say. Part of me was trying to figure out if Mrs. Price could be right about all this, but I pushed that voice away. I didn't want to believe it, and I didn't believe it. I pulled away from her grasp. Dr. Roop is in charge, and he doesn't have any problem with me spending time with Steve or Tamrat, so you're out of luck. You don't have any power over me.
No, not here, she agreed. But when we get back to Earth, I'm going to be the only adult who will be able to report on what happened on Confederation Central. If I want to make your life or your family's life difficult, I can do that.
Now she was threatening my mother. I stared at her icily because I couldn't think of anything else to say.
I'm trying to help you, Zeke. Please remember that.
She turned away and left me standing in the hall.